Hello, welcome to my channel. Today we're gonna talk about my latest iteration of Poorman's Cremation build that was specifically done for Blight-Ravaged content, and this version costs around 100 divines, and this will be the last video about this build in this league because in my opinion this is the point where upgrading this build forward will cost you tons of money, and I think there are better builds to do the job, but if you really like it, there is a way. There is a poison version that bases on original scene, and it scales the damage, like it doubles or triples the damage basically, right? But have in mind that this build has been nerfed hard in this league, so it might be no longer be a good tool for like magic finding or playing some bosses content or anything else, right? So it's still good for ravaged maps, and it's a still good league starter to get the job done early on, right? So let's get into the basics. If you've never seen any video about it, right, this is the first version that you can start with. It's a 15 divines cremation with 5 link that clears triple till ravaged map. This has been done this video has been recorded few days after the league start, so this is the first version that you could potentially start doing this content. All the costs are in this Excel, so this would be the potentially league starting version. This is the version where you potentially swap from DD, right? So you league start with normal DD elementalist, you get enough money with normal blights and ravaged maps running detonate that, and when you get like 20-30 divines and you feel like to, then you swap to this version, right? So this is exactly like 16 divines at the time where divine was like 140, so it was a long time ago. So it's 2400 chaos, and this version is pretty comfortable with ravaged map. This version could be, let's say, a little bit suffering, but potentially you could start doing normal blights with this, getting more money, getting to that version later, right? So that would be the first point where you can, for instance, scrap ambers. It's like 7 divines. That should be like day 1 or day 2 if you really league started with cremation right away. So there's this video with 15 divines, there is this POB. Then another step will be this video where I explain more upgrades in details. There's also POB, there's also link to the original guide. There's also of course link to this spreadsheet. And today we're gonna talk about my latest iteration. Oh, sorry, there was one in between. So there was also this 50-70 divines version which can clear all corrupted mods. And today video will be about swapping from this version, from 50-70 divines, to the 100 divines one, which can clear ravaged map, 8 mod, triple till towerless, right? So this is video about that. If you are just starting with this build, watch the other videos, because today we're gonna talk about the top end of this build for this content, right? And jumping straight into the details. So what did we change? From items, not really much. All we did is swapped our unique items to corrupted ones, so we get increased damage on a chest. That's around 5 divines. Then we've got +1 level of socketed gems. This is for determination. You could potentially get something like fire damage, physical damage taken as fire damage, because we have increased elemental resistances, which means that could be, let's say, more. But we have around 80% of physical damage reduction, which is quite okay, I think, for the content, and we don't need much. So shield is whatever you'd like. Regarding helmet, I think +2 for our discipline and purity of elements and purity of ice. That gives you extra maximum resistance, right? So you could top it with +2 from your gloves. There are many more ways that you can get up to 90 with that, but we don't need it for ravaged maps, so it's irrelevant. My belt is completely useless at this point. You could potentially put in something to increase like minion damage, like elemental damage, that will work, and increase your DPS. Or you could swap to mageblood if you want, and then play with your flasks, right? So I'm still not sure what flasks are optimal, whether we are still going to use Ruby Flask or Oriat's End as our 5th flask. I checked POE, Ninja, and people actually rank different flasks for that. So it's, I think, open case, right? Whatever you like. Anyway, this version contains, of course, a crystal belt. It's nothing fancy, and mageblood is like double the whole cost of this build, so it's not included, but this build is open to use it, right? So I wanted to point this out. So our biggest changes were in the tree, because initially when I started with this build, we had maximum 3 geysers by Cremation. With this league changes, it was nerfed to just 1 geyser, and that's a bummer because that's tons of DPS gone, right? So first of all, I started with normal progression, where we really invest into defenses, because defenses are really strong with this build, and for ravaged maps it's nice to have defenses so you can roam the map, you can enter, you know, those proximity shields, you can really face tank bosses if they leak, so that's really important to have great defenses. But this build in previous leagues had so much DPS because of the 200 increased monster health modifier on your ravaged maps, and we never had to care about DPS too much, right? So we could potentially get enough DPS to clear this at a 20-30 defense budget. Now it's no longer possible. We need to scale our DPS with some items, and I think I've started in this league from wrong side, because I first focused on defenses and I played with one large cluster, while swapping to 2 large clusters has significant more damage, and this build feels much better with double cluster setup. And I think next league, if I'm gonna play this, I will try to find a way how to, you know, build around 2 large cluster setup. Not sure if I will stick a medium cluster in that. Not sure if I can stick, like, probably not the forbidden flashes early on to replace 2 curses, but more on that more about that in a second. So I will definitely start differently, and we won't have charms. That's again a little bit of DPS, but let's see how it will, you know, how this league ends and what will be the changes for the next one. But no longer about theorizing, let's go to the changes I've done, right? So on this side, we just, you know, refunded the additional curse, so that's 4 points, and we entered this cluster jewel. We unspec'd those ones. By the way, I'm level 98, so we have a lot of points. Not sure if you can do that earlier, but potentially you could skip some defenses, right? We don't need that much energy shield or something. I'd still keep the caster wheel because it's really useful for ravaged maps, so that's pretty much mandatory. And I think you can just try to reduce some defenses to get some points more early on, and of course skip the medium cluster if you struggle. And that's, I think, the biggest change in the tree. Then what we do is we use now a different jewel with that which was taken. So this adds some strength to help us match the attribute requirements. Projectiles can chain when colliding with terrain. I'm not really sure how this works with Cremation. I believe the Cremation bounces from the ground and it hits again. So 1 in 5th will do that. I don't think this is really great, but I don't know. I just put it in because of the other modifiers on this jewel. So the exposures have +7 to resistance, so that's overall 25, which is nice. Then your corpses have 20% increased maximum health. So I believe grabbing those additional resistance reduction and corpse maximum health is really worth it. Although having corrupted blood immunity is also nice. So myself, I don't care that much because I will be wearing mageblood, so I will be having that from flasks. But if you don't, maybe put here some corrupted, try to find one with corrupted blood, or try to get one that might be expensive, or just skip this completely and put rare jewel here and stay with corrupted blood immunity. This is not really mandatory. So this is the biggest change that I've done, and this allowed me to clear the maps really towerless. There's no, let's say, rocket science here. It's pretty straightforward. We rearranged our tree a bit. We, removed some defense nodes. We could remove more if we have lower level, and we added a second cluster. It's exactly the same cluster. It costs 3 divines. Then we have a medium cluster, and that really helps us. I have 2% reservation efficiency, which is really nice on top of, because I have little extra money. I could potentially get rid of my inspiration now and place some, you know, like another spell in my scepter that could also add a bit of damage, which maybe I will do, but that's not really necessary to achieve the goal, which is clearing, you know, Ravaged map towerless. And clearing Ravaged maps towerless is not really strategy, but it's, let's say, it's a level where your character dominates the content and you will never fail Ravaged map again. So going to the POE, if you wonder what's my full DPS, I think it's around 22 millions in the Ravaged Blight content. Outside of it, I think it will be closer to 11 million DPS, which is not really high at this budget, but this build has really great defenses. You can face tank simulacrum bosses at wave 30, which is nice. So how does this get calculated? So basically you take your corpse health here. This is around 220 with all the increases from charms and the witch was taken. And then you multiply this by 2, which, because that's the modifier on Ravaged maps, that gives 440,000 health. And then you set up your cremation count for 10, because let me show you, because we have just one geyser now, and projectile count is 10, right? So we have maximum of 10 projectiles. Before the nerf, it could be like 30. So you can see how much DPS we've lost, and it is what it is, right? We cannot do much about it. There are some things you can do to the build. I really recommend you checking the POE Ninja for inspiration. So this is the original scene version. And there are plenty of small things that you can do, but that comes at a cost. And I don't think it's worth to develop this build further if your goal is to make a lot of currency and maybe fund something else. If you really want to pursue the poison version, just refer to the original guide, the Grip's Immortal Cremation. And I think it's really nice. Some people play it, so I think it works. There are some people that use also like a little bit of Magic Find with a gold flask, Ventor's Gamble, but nothing fancy. I believe, yeah, they should have a helmet with Magic Find. I don't know why, but you know, some of those builds probably are not good, but I think you can squeeze some Magic Find into this build and run the maps like with Tornado Shot. It should be pretty fast with mageblood, but I'm not sure if it's the cheapest and best tool for the game, so I can only recommend this to run Ravaged Blights. And like I say, the budget is 100 divines, and this is with current prices. I bet I haven't paid 100 divines for my build, because I've got some items like really cheap long time ago. Like even, I believe I paid, where's the Melding of the Flesh? Yeah, I paid for Melding of the Flesh. Let's see how much. Yeah, I paid 25 chaos on day 3. Now it costs few divines, right? So in this calculation, yeah, it's 5 divines. So in this calculation, I use 5 divines while I paid 25 early on. So that will be a huge difference in costs that you need to do if you start with it. If you want to swap to it now, it will cost you 100 divines. And that concludes this video. There will be nothing more about it in this league, so stay tuned for more Ravaged Blight analysis, about Blight content, about, you know, some other stuff I plan to create still in this league, but from the build side it's over. So thank you all and see you. Bye.